Have you ever wondered why, after all the waiting, after all the doubts, the moment you stayed true to yourself, something began to shift, and suddenly, their heart is catching up to you? This is no accident, my friends. This is the law of life, and tonight I will show you how it works. When you stayed true to yourself in relationships, when you held fast to your true self-love and relationships, you set into motion a law that does not fail. You see, when you no longer beg for recognition, when you no longer twist yourself to fit the mold of another, their heart begins to awaken, and their heart begins to catch up to you. I remember years ago, in my own life, I faced this exact test. I had someone I loved deeply, yet their attention wandered. I was tempted to bend, to compromise my very soul to keep them near. But instead, I made a decision. I stayed true to myself. I rested in the assurance of my own worth. I lived in the quiet, knowing that what is mine cannot be taken, and what is real cannot be lost. And in time, when I had ceased striving, they returned, not because I begged, but because I had remained authentic. What does it mean to stay true to yourself? It is more than a phrase written in a book of sayings, more than the advice of a kind friend. It is the very root from which all the branches of love, harmony, and fulfillment grow. If you cut away from it, if you abandon the root, you may find yourself in relationships, yes, but they will wither in time because they are not rooted in the strength of your true self. The power of staying true to yourself is not weakness, it is not stubborn pride, but it is the very seed of every lasting relationship, for only the real can sustain the real. I recall a season in my own life when this truth became undeniable. There was someone for whom I cared deeply, but in their eyes I was not enough. At least that was the appearance. They sought something elsewhere, something different, something that was not me. And for a time I was tempted to bend, to change, to shape myself into the image I thought they desired. Perhaps you have felt this temptation, to laugh at things you do not find funny, to agree with words you do not believe, to mold yourself into a copy of their preference. But I discovered, and painfully so, that every time I betrayed myself in thought or action, I was planting a seed of weakness. That weakness bore fruit, and the relationship began to collapse under the weight of its falsehood. One evening, I withdrew from all the noise, and in the quiet of my room, I resolved that I would no longer pretend. I would no longer diminish myself for the approval of another. I affirmed within that I am enough, that my value does not increase or decrease by the opinions of others. It was in that moment of decision that everything began to change. Though nothing on the outside appeared different at once, within I had touched the eternal truth, that the world outside only mirrors the posture of the world inside. By staying true to myself, I had aligned with the only power that sustains love. This is not merely about romance, though it includes it. It touches every sphere of life, friendships, partnerships, even the bond between parent and child. To stay true to yourself means you refuse to compromise the essence of who you are in order to gain favor. It means you live from the assurance that your authenticity is not only sufficient but magnetic. When you stand rooted in this truth, you send out a silent signal that others can feel. Without a word spoken, they sense your strength, your stability, your wholeness. And it is this quality that draws them near, for all are seeking in another the solidity they have not yet found within themselves. The world will test you, make no mistake. You will meet those who seem to demand your compromise, who push you to abandon your truth in order to keep their company. But if you yield, you will lose them anyway, for nothing false can last. The mask eventually slips, and when it does, both you and they are left empty. But when you remain steadfast, though it may appear for a time that you stand alone, in the end you discover that you have gained everything, for you have gained yourself. And once you are established in self, the right companions, the true companions, cannot help but come. In matters of the heart, this principle reveals its greatest beauty. When you no longer chase after affection, when you no longer twist yourself for acceptance, when you remain still in your own worth, you will find that love flows to you naturally, not forced, not demanded, not begged, but drawn by the law of likeness. For love seeks authenticity, and when it finds it, it rests. Many believe they must work, must strive, must manipulate in order to be loved. They do not see that the greatest work is to remain unmoved in the truth of self. When you know who you are, you have already done the work, and the rest is inevitable. So let me tell you plainly, staying true to yourself is not the easy road, but it is the only road that leads to what you truly desire. At first, you may lose what is false, but in losing you gain the real. And when the real comes, it remains. For only truth can sustain truth. Every lasting relationship, every enduring bond, is built not on the shifting sands of pretense, but on the rock of authenticity. Therefore, do not be afraid when circumstances tempt you to compromise. Do not shrink back when others do not yet see your worth. Know within that by holding fast to your truth, you are planting the seed of love that will not wither. It may not bloom in a day, it may not appear in a week, but in its season it must come forth, and when it does, it will bear fruit that does not fade. And so, I urge you to look within tonight. Ask yourself, have I betrayed my own heart to keep the favor of another? Have I silenced my voice to be accepted? If so, forgive yourself now and return to the truth. For when you remain true, you align with the law that governs life, and nothing in heaven or earth can take from you what is yours. That is the power of staying true to yourself, the very seed of every lasting relationship. When you hold fast to your self-respect in relationships, you set in motion a current that no one can resist. Self-respect is not arrogance, nor is it pride in the shallow sense. It is the quiet knowing of your own value, the calm assurance that you need not bend to the opinions of others to justify your existence. It is the recognition that you are whole, and because you are whole, you need not chase what already belongs to you by right of consciousness. I remember a time when I learned this lesson not through books, but through the sharp edge of experience. There was someone whose love I longed for. I believed that if I could only be more agreeable, more available, more yielding, then surely I would be loved in return. So I gave, and I gave, and I gave. Yet the more I offered, the less they valued it. The more I bent, the less they regarded my presence. At last, exhausted and weary, I realized that I had traded my dignity for the illusion of closeness, and in doing so, I had lost both. It was then I understood that self-respect is the true magnet of love. When you respect yourself, you move with a quiet authority. You do not beg for affection, you radiate it from within. You do not plead for validation, you live as one already validated by the highest law. And in that posture, others cannot help but respond, for they sense in you something they may not even recognize in themselves: solidity, strength, and truth. The world, you see, mirrors back to us what we are within. If we secretly believe we are unworthy, life will echo it in the coldness of others. But if we dwell in the knowing that we are worthy, life must eventually reflect it in the warmth of those around us. Self-respect is the bridge between the inner and the outer, the unseen and the seen. It is the guardian that prevents us from entering into bonds that diminish us, and keeps us aligned with those that elevate us. And here lies the paradox: when you no longer chase after love, it comes. When you cease to beg for attention, you receive it. When you stop lowering yourself to be chosen, you discover you were chosen all along. For the heart recognizes in another what they hold for themselves. If you cannot honor yourself, do not expect another to honor you. If you betray your own dignity, do not expect another to guard it for you. You must be the one to set the standard, and once set, it is kept by all who enter your world. I have seen this play out time and again, both in my life and in the lives of those who dared to test it. A woman who once begged for her partner's commitment found herself abandoned until she chose to stand firm in her worth. No longer did she plead, no longer did she diminish herself. She walked in the dignity of one who knows her value, and not long after, the same partner who had once ignored her sought her with new eyes. What had changed? Not the world, not the partner, but the woman herself. She had chosen self-respect, and the world obeyed. You must understand that relationships do not thrive on neediness, but on wholeness. When you cling to another in desperation, you suffocate the very love you wish to keep. But when you stand firm in yourself, when you can say, "I am enough," with or without your approval, then love flows freely. It is not coerced. It is not forced, it is not demanded. It is given because freedom is the essence of true affection. And so if you find yourself in a place where you feel disregarded, do not ask first why they do not see you. Ask instead, do I see myself? Do I honor my own voice, my own truth, my own dignity? For once you answer that question and live from the truth of it, the external world has no choice but to follow. In this way, self-respect is not merely a personal virtue, it is the law of attraction in its purest form. It determines the caliber of love you receive, the kind of friendships you sustain, even the opportunities that flow into your life. There is a saying that love your neighbor as yourself. But how can one love a neighbor truly if one despises oneself? Self-respect is not selfishness, it is the foundation upon which every relationship is built. To respect yourself is to give others a model of how they must respect you. It is to declare silently, this is who I am, this is what I am worthy of, and nothing less will I accept. The world hears even if no words are spoken. Therefore, do not imagine that to hold fast to your self-respect is to push others away. No, it is to invite the right ones to draw near, those who can meet you at the level of your truth. You may lose some along the way, yes, but you will lose only what was never meant to remain. And what stays, what arrives, will not be drawn by manipulation, but by recognition. Recognition of the worth you already know within. That is the power of holding fast to self-respect in relationships. It is not only a defense against harm, it is the key that unlocks the door to love that lasts. To be authentic in love and life is to live from the center of your being, unmasked, unaltered, unashamed. Authenticity is not a costume you wear for a certain occasion, nor is it a performance crafted to gain applause. It is the willingness to show up as you are, with nothing added, nothing taken away. And though many fear that such honesty will cost them love, the truth is that only authenticity can sustain it. For what is built on illusion must eventually collapse, but what is founded on truth cannot be shaken. There was a time in my life when I tried the opposite. I believed that if I adjusted my manner of speaking, if I reshaped my interests, if I buried my true desires, then I could hold the attention of someone I wished to keep. I thought that by fitting into their image, I would secure love. But I discovered, after much effort and pain, that all I had secured was distance. They could feel that what I presented was not genuine. I had worn a mask so long that I nearly forgot the face beneath it. And in doing so, I had lost not only their affection, but my own peace. It was only when I laid down the performance and chose to be myself, in the raw simplicity of my being, that something shifted. Though it was frightening at first, though I feared rejection, I found instead a strange kind of freedom. I no longer carried the weight of pretending. I no longer lived in fear that my mask might slip. I walked in the dignity of authenticity, and that dignity became my strength. Those who had been drawn to the illusion departed, but those who remained, and those who entered my life afterward, did so because they recognized the reality of who I was. And in that recognition, real love was born. Authenticity in love is not about exposing every secret thought, nor about being careless with the feelings of others. It is about alignment, that what you feel within and what you express without are one and the same. When you love from authenticity, your words carry power, for they are not spoken to manipulate, but to reveal truth. When you live authentically, your presence becomes magnetic, for you carry no contradiction within. Others sense it, even if they cannot explain it. They are drawn to the integrity of your being. Consider the countless relationships that crumble because one or both parties were not true to themselves. At the beginning, masks are worn, roles are played, and appearances are carefully crafted. But time always uncovers the truth, and when it does, disappointment follows, for the love was not with the person who truly exists, but with the character that was being played. If the character disappears, so does the affection. This is why authenticity is not only desirable, but necessary. It ensures that the love you receive is directed at you, the real you, and not at a mask you cannot wear forever. The same is true beyond romance. In life, in work, in friendships, those who prosper are not the ones who bend themselves endlessly for approval, but those who stand firm in their identity. To live authentically is to move without apology, to pursue what resonates with your soul rather than what pleases the crowd. And though at times it may feel lonely, authenticity always gathers to itself the right companions, the right opportunities, the right love. For when you live in truth, you signal to the world what belongs to you, and in due time it comes. Some will say, but if I am authentic, I will lose people. And yes, you may. But what you lose are those who were never truly aligned with you to begin with. Better the pain of shedding the false than the agony of living bound by pretense. When you are authentic, you filter out the fleeting and draw in the lasting. For those who love the real you will not leave, and those who leave never loved you at all. Do not mistake authenticity for harshness, nor for rebellion against every voice but your own. Authenticity is harmony, not discord. It is not the cry of defiance, but the quiet strength of alignment. To be authentic in love and life is to embody the truth that you are already enough. You do not need to perform. You do not need to chase. You do not need to distort yourself into the image of another. The simple act of being yourself, without apology, becomes your greatest gift, and through that gift, love flows naturally. So I tell you, if you desire lasting love, if you desire peace in life, you must begin here. By daring to be authentic. It may not be the easiest road, but it is the only road that leads to joy without regret. For in authenticity lies freedom, and in freedom lies the only kind of love worth having. They will realize your value the moment you realize it first. This is a truth hidden in plain sight, yet overlooked by nearly everyone who seeks love, companionship, or respect. We wait for others to declare our worth, to crown us with affection, to affirm that we are enough. And while we wait, we diminish ourselves, never seeing that the world is only echoing what we silently believe. If within we hold the thought that we are unworthy, others will reflect it with indifference. If we hold the belief that we must strive for attention, others will keep it from us. But the instant we awaken to our own worth, something in the atmosphere shifts. Others begin to see in us what we have at last seen in ourselves. I remember when I first came face to face with this principle, there was someone in my life whose approval I sought desperately. Every glance, every word from them felt like a verdict on my value. When they were warm, I felt lifted. When they were distant, I felt diminished. I lived as though their recognition was the sun, and I was a cold planet circling, waiting to be warmed. Yet the more I sought their acknowledgement, the further it seemed to slip from reach. My anxiety grew, my self-image shrank, and still they remained unmoved. Then one night, weary of chasing shadows, I asked myself a question. What if I no longer waited for them to declare my worth? What if I declared it for myself? What if the crown I sought was already mine to wear? That night I closed my eyes and imagined myself not as one longing, but as one beloved. Not as one diminished, but as one honored. I felt the dignity of being whole, of being valuable, of being enough exactly as I was. And though nothing outside seemed to change at once, something in me had shifted. I no longer lived in the poverty of waiting. I lived in the abundance of knowing. From that day, their behavior changed. Slowly at first, then unmistakably. The same person who had been indifferent began to take notice, to offer the very attention I had once begged for. But this time I was no longer desperate for it, for I had already found within what they were now reflecting without. The truth revealed itself. They realized my value because I had realized it first. This is not mere coincidence, it is law. The outer world cannot show you what you have not already shown yourself. People do not see you as you are, they see you as you see yourself. If you present yourself as small, they will treat you as small. If you live from lack, they will treat you as lacking. But if you carry yourself in the quiet assurance of worth, they cannot help but acknowledge it, for your own conviction impresses itself upon them. This principle applies to every sphere of life. In work, the one who doubts their competence is passed over, while the one who walks in confidence receives promotion. In friendship, the one who fears abandonment often finds themselves abandoned, while the one who knows they are enough attracts loyal companions. And in love, the one who begs for recognition finds rejection, while the one who knows they are worthy finds their worth mirrored in the devotion of another. The temptation is always to look outward, to measure our value by how others treat us. But this is to confuse the mirror for the face. The world is but a reflection, the reality is within. The great work, then, is not to force others to recognize your value, but to recognize it yourself, and to live from that recognition until the mirror reflects it back. So I ask you, have you been waiting for someone to realize your worth? Have you been sitting in the shadow, hoping that one day they will wake up and see what you have carried all along? Stop waiting. They will never see it until you do. The key is not in their hands, it is in yours. The moment you awaken to your own value, the world must awaken to it as well. When you know who you are, when you rest in the dignity of your worth, you move differently. Your words carry weight. Your presence commands respect, not because you demand it, but because you embody it. And in that embodiment, others cannot help but align. They begin to treat you in accordance with the truth you have accepted. This is why the change begins within, for only then can it manifest without. So let this truth take root in you. They will realize your value the moment you realize it first. Do not wait for love to confirm it. Do not wait for success to prove it. Do not wait for another's words to bestow it. Claim it now. Feel it now. Live it now. And watch as the world, like a faithful servant, reflects back to you the worth you have at last recognized. Soulmates, realizing your worth happens only when you cease chasing and begin resting in your identity. This is a truth that many overlook, for the world teaches the opposite. The world says, pursue them, prove yourself, win their attention, bend and shape yourself until you are chosen. But what the world calls love is often a desperate race, an endless chase, and in chasing, we forget who we are. We think we must become someone else to be loved. But in that very effort, we lose the only thing that could ever make love lasting, the truth of our own being. I once believed that love was secured by effort. If I could only give enough, say enough, prove enough, then surely the one I loved would awaken and see me. And so I tried. I extended myself beyond what was natural. I ignored my own needs, my own voice, my own dignity, hoping that such sacrifice would purchase affection. But the more I gave, the further away they seemed. My pursuit, far from drawing them closer, only drove them away. For love cannot thrive where one is chasing and the other is fleeing. Love is not found in pursuit, but in stillness, in the quiet strength of knowing. It was only when I stopped the chase that everything changed. I remember the night clearly. I was weary not only in body but in soul. I asked myself, what if I no longer pursued? What if I no longer begged for recognition? What if I simply rested in the truth that I am already whole, already worthy, already loved? That night I let go of the desperate striving, and I embraced stillness. I imagined myself not as one rejected, but as one chosen. I felt the calm of already being seen, already being honored. And in that rest I found peace. In time, the one I loved began to see me differently. Without my chase, without my striving, their heart began to turn. They approached me now, not because I demanded it, but because I had ceased demanding. What I had longed for came, but it came not through pursuit, but through rest. And I learned then what I tell you now. The moment you cease chasing and begin resting in your identity, your soulmate, or the one meant for you, will realize your worth. This is not only about romance, though it is most often revealed there. It is about the law of attraction itself. When you chase, you announce lack. You declare with every step, I do not have, I am not chosen, I am not enough. The energy of lack repels what you desire. But when you rest in identity, when you declare silently, I am enough, I am chosen, I am worthy, then the energy shifts. You are no longer trying to pull love toward you. You are allowing love to flow naturally, because like attracts like. Love cannot resist the one who rests in love. Think of the difference between the beggar and the sovereign. The beggar stretches out his hand, hoping for scraps, and he may be given something small, but he will always be beneath the one who gives. The sovereign sits upon the throne, asking nothing, demanding nothing, yet the world brings its gifts to him because he embodies authority. In love, you must decide, will you be the beggar or the sovereign? If you chase, you beg. If you rest, you reign. And when you reign in your identity, love comes to bow at your feet. Many fear that if they stop chasing, love will be lost forever. But if love is lost when you cease striving, then it was never yours to begin with. True love, soul deep love, cannot be won by effort, nor lost by stillness. It responds only to truth. And truth is found when you are aligned with your identity, when you are no longer running, no longer hiding, but standing in the fullness of who you are. So if you are weary of the chase, I tell you this: stop running. Stop begging. Stop striving. Dare to rest. Rest in the knowing that what is yours is already yours. Rest in the assurance that you need not alter yourself to be loved. Rest in the identity of one who is chosen, and you will see the change unfold. For when you cease chasing, you no longer declare lack. You declare abundance, and abundance attracts its likeness. And as surely as the sun rises, those who are meant to love you will awaken to your worth, not because you demanded it, not because you chased it, but because you at last believed it. You stopped asking them to crown you, and you placed the crown upon your own head. And once you did, the world could not help but acknowledge it. That is how soulmates realize your worth. Not when you chase, but when you rest in who you already are. The manifestation of love through authenticity comes when you refuse to betray your inner truth. The world around you has been shaped to believe that love must be earned through compromise, through endless sacrifice of the self, through bending until you nearly break. Many are taught that in order to be loved, they must silence their voice, hide their desires, and pretend to be what another wants. And yet all such efforts lead only to disappointment, for love cannot be built on betrayal of the self. Love responds not to disguise, but to truth. Only when you dare to stand authentic can love reveal itself in its purest form. I remember a time in my life when I lived this lesson. I cared deeply for someone, and I believed that to win them I must constantly adapt to their expectations. If they wanted silence, I quieted my voice. If they wanted agreement, I swallowed my opinion. If they wanted distance, I withdrew, even when my heart longed for closeness. And though I gave everything I thought they wanted, what I received in return was emptiness. They seemed to see me less and less, as though my very effort to please made me invisible. The more I betrayed myself to secure their love, the further away love slipped from me. It was in the solitude of a night that clarity came. I asked myself, what if I stop betraying my heart? What if I no longer hide behind masks, no longer silence my truth? What if I simply lived authentically, without apology, without disguise? The fear was there, of course, for I thought if I showed my true self, I might lose them entirely. But the greater fear was of losing myself completely. And so, I chose authenticity. I chose to stand as I am, to speak with honesty, to live in alignment with my inner truth. The change was immediate, not in them at first, but in me. A burden lifted, a heaviness dissolved, and in its place came peace. I was no longer a character in a play written by someone else. I was alive, real, whole. And when I lived in that truth, the reflection began to shift. That same person who once overlooked me began to take notice. Others, too, were drawn into my world, not because I sought them, but because authenticity carries a power that cannot be denied. It became clear that love manifests not when you betray yourself, but when you honor yourself. You see, authenticity is magnetic. It sends a silent signal into the world that says, I am whole, I am enough, I am real. And because the world is a mirror, it reflects that signal back in the form of those who honor you, who see you, who love you as you are. But when you betray yourself, you send out the opposite signal. I am not enough. I must pretend, I must earn. And that signal, too, is mirrored back, drawing people who demand more pretense, more sacrifice, until you are left empty. The difference between betrayal and authenticity is the difference between chasing shadows and standing in the sun. Do not imagine that authenticity means conflict or harshness. Authenticity is not cruelty, nor is it rebellion against every voice but your own. It is the simple alignment of inner truth with outer expression. It is speaking when you have something to say and remaining silent when silence is true. It is walking your path without apology, not to trample others, but to honor yourself. And in this alignment you discover that love flows with ease, for only truth can sustain truth. Think of the countless relationships that collapse under the weight of pretense. At first, masks are convincing, roles are believable. But time unmasks all disguises, and when the truth is revealed, love that was founded on illusion crumbles. Yet love that begins with authenticity, though it may be tested, endures, for it has nothing to fear from exposure. What you see is what is truly there, and what is truly there is enough. The manifestation of love through authenticity is not a mystery, it is inevitable. For when you refuse to betray your inner truth, you align with the law of likeness. Love cannot help but come to the one who is real, for the real always recognizes the real. If you wish for love that lasts, you must dare to show yourself as you are. Not the self that pleases everyone, not the self that hides in fear, but the self that stands in wholeness. That is the only self that love can find, and the only self that can sustain it once it arrives. So I tell you, do not hide, do not shrink, do not betray the truth of your being for the illusion of affection. Stand in authenticity and watch as the world rearranges itself. For when you live true, love manifests not as a fleeting shadow, but as a lasting reality. Self-love attracts real love, for it is from the well of your own being that you draw the love you seek. The world will tell you to look outward, to find validation from others, to search for love in places and faces, to seek what you believe is missing. But what if I told you that everything you seek, every ounce of affection, every moment of connection, is already within you? What if you knew that the key to unlocking love was not outside of you, but inside? I remember a time when I sought love in all the wrong places. I believed that if only someone would love me, if only someone would see me as I wished to be seen, then I would be whole. I gave pieces of myself away, thinking that in giving I would receive. But the more I gave, the emptier I became, for I was giving from a place of lack, from the belief that love was something to be earned, and not something that already existed within me. I was looking outside for what could only be found within. It wasn't until I paused, until I turned inward, that I discovered the truth. The love I sought from others was already mine to give. It was not a commodity to be traded, nor a prize to be won, but a presence, a deep and unwavering current flowing through me. When I stopped seeking love from others and instead began to honor and love myself, everything shifted. I no longer sought approval. I no longer needed validation because I knew deep within that I was enough. I began to live from a place of self-love, not as a concept, but as a living truth. And the moment I did, the world responded. Those around me, who had once been distant, began to draw closer. The people who had seemed indifferent began to see me, not for what I wanted them to see, but for who I truly was. And I understood then that self-love is not a narcissistic desire or a selfish need, but the very foundation of every meaningful connection. For only when you truly love yourself can you draw others into your life who can love you in return. Self-love is the magnet that pulls real love into your life. When you stand in the truth of your own worth, when you no longer look for love in the eyes of others, but in the truth of your own being, you radiate a frequency that cannot be ignored. Those who are aligned with that frequency are drawn to you. It is not that you need them. It is that they recognize the same truth that you have recognized within yourself. You are not empty, you are whole, and in that wholeness, love becomes inevitable. When you live from a place of self-love, you no longer need to beg for affection, to chase after approval, to twist yourself into someone else's image. You simply rest in your own worth, and love begins to flow naturally. It is not forced, it is not manipulated, it is not coerced. It is drawn to you because you have already acknowledged it within yourself. Love that is forced will always feel shallow and temporary, but love that is drawn out from within you will remain deep and enduring. I have seen this happen again and again, both in my life and in the lives of others. The moment someone stops seeking love from the outside, the moment they begin to love themselves, the world around them changes. People who once ignored them begin to take notice. Relationships that were strained begin to heal. New connections form and old bonds deepen. But it is not because they have become someone else. It is because they have finally become themselves. They have found the love they sought within, and in that discovery, they have unlocked the door to all the love they will ever need. This is the power of self-love. It is the seed from which all other love grows. When you love yourself, you do not need to prove anything to anyone. You do not need to gain their approval, their attention, or their affection. You have already proven your worth to yourself, and when you live from that truth, the world must align with it. People who are meant to be in your life will come, not because you chased them, but because they saw you standing in your truth. Self-love is not about self-centeredness or indulgence. It is not about elevating yourself above others or demanding that the world revolve around you. It is about the quiet recognition that you are worthy, that you are enough exactly as you are. It is about nurturing and honoring yourself, setting healthy boundaries, and living in integrity with your own values. When you love yourself in this way, you radiate a peace that attracts those who can love you in the same way. And when you live from a place of self-love, you also become a better vessel for love to flow outward. You no longer have to force affection, because it flows naturally. You no longer have to manipulate or control relationships, because you trust in your own worth. You can give freely, knowing that you are already whole, and that your love comes from abundance, not from need. And in this giving, you receive more than you could ever ask for. So I tell you this, stop seeking love outside of yourself. Stop looking for validation in others. Look within, recognize your own worth, and begin to love yourself as you are. You are not incomplete. You are not lacking. You are whole, and in that wholeness, all the love you need will flow towards you. The moment you love yourself, the world cannot help but mirror that love back to you. And the love that returns to you will be the love that is real, deep, and lasting. When you remain true, your energy makes them come back, drawn not by force, but by the natural magnetism of your being. This is the law of attraction at its highest expression. Not the desperate force that comes from needing or wanting, but the gentle, unshakable pull that comes from knowing who you are. The universe responds to your internal state. When you remain grounded in the truth of your own worth, when you stand unshaken in your authentic self, you send out a frequency that others cannot ignore. And it is this frequency, this energy, that draws them back to you. I once experienced this truth in a way that reshaped my understanding of love and relationships. There was someone I cared for deeply, but the more I gave, the more I found myself in a state of need. I thought that by constantly offering, by endlessly giving my time, my energy, my affection, I could somehow win their love. But the more I gave, the more distant they became. I was giving from a place of lack, from a belief that I was not enough as I was, that I needed to prove my worth by doing more. And in doing so, I only pushed them further away. Then came a moment of realization. I had been looking outward for validation, looking for them to return the love I thought I lacked. But what if, instead, I turned inward? What if, instead of seeking their approval, I gave myself the approval I sought from them? What if I stopped trying to fill a void with their affection, and instead filled the void within myself with self-love, self-acceptance, and a deep knowing of my own worth? And so, I made a choice. I decided to stop chasing. I stopped seeking their attention. I stopped giving from a place of need and began giving from a place of wholeness. I began to rest in the truth of who I was, not as someone who needed to be validated, but as someone who was already whole and worthy of love. I no longer tried to manipulate the situation, to force love to come to me. I simply stood in my own energy, trusting that what was meant for me would find its way to me in its own time. And that's when the shift happened. Slowly at first, and then unmistakably, their behavior changed. They began to come toward me, not because I had demanded it, but because I had stopped demanding. My energy had shifted. I was no longer chasing after them, no longer living in a state of lack. I had become grounded in my own worth, and in doing so, I had aligned myself with the law of attraction. They were drawn to me not by force, but by the natural magnetism of my being. You see, the more you chase, the more you push love away. When you are desperate for someone's attention, when you need validation, you send out a message of lack. You declare to the universe that you are not whole, that you need something from the outside to fill you. And in doing so, you repel what you desire. But when you stand in your own energy, when you know your worth, you send out a signal of abundance. You declare that you are whole, that you are enough, that you do not need anyone to complete you. And in that knowing, others are drawn to you. They come not because you chase them, but because they recognize the energy of someone who is already complete. This principle applies to all areas of life, not just romantic relationships. In friendships, in work, in every interaction, when you remain true to who you are, you attract the right people, the right opportunities, and the right circumstances. When you are grounded in your truth, you create a magnetic field around you that draws what is aligned with your energy. It is not about forcing or striving. It is about being, and in being, you become a magnet for all that is meant for you. I have seen this truth unfold time and again in my own life. The moment I stopped chasing, the moment I stopped seeking validation from others, I found that the world began to mirror back to me what I had finally recognized within myself. People who once ignored me began to take notice. Opportunities that once seemed out of reach began to come to me effortlessly. And it was not because I had forced them, but because I had aligned myself with the truth of my own worth. This is the power of standing in your own energy. When you know who you are, when you are not swayed by the opinions or actions of others, you become a beacon of light that attracts the right people, the right circumstances, and the right experiences. You do not have to chase, you do not have to beg. What is meant for you will come to you naturally, drawn by the magnetic force of your authenticity. So, I urge you to stand in your own energy. Stop chasing, stop needing, stop seeking approval. Instead, rest in the truth of who you are. Know that you are whole, that you are worthy, that you are enough. And as you do, watch as the world around you changes. Watch as the people, the love, the opportunities that are meant for you are drawn to you effortlessly. For when you remain true to yourself, when you align with your own energy, you become a magnet for all that you desire. The journey through these teachings has revealed a singular, powerful truth, the foundation of every lasting connection. Every meaningful relationship and every abundant experience lies in the authenticity of your being. When you stand in your truth, when you remain unwavering in your own worth, the world must reflect the truth back to you. Relationships do not thrive on pretense, nor does love blossom from need. It is when you are anchored in self-respect, self-love, and a deep knowing of your inherent worth that true love, real connection, and meaningful experiences find their way into your life. By staying true to yourself, you become a magnet for all that is aligned with your energy. You no longer chase after affection, recognition, or success, because you recognize that they are already within you. When you cease looking outside for validation, the world begins to respond, and you attract what is meant for you, effortlessly and abundantly. Your energy becomes the force that draws love, opportunity, and fulfillment to your doorstep. You will encounter challenges along the way, no doubt. The world may attempt to make you doubt yourself, to make you feel small or unworthy. But remember, the moment you begin to believe in your own value, to live in your own truth, the world has no choice but to reflect that belief back to you. What you accept as true within yourself will be mirrored in your relationships, your career, and your life circumstances. So, stand firm in the knowing that you are enough. Let go of the chase, release the need for external validation, and rest in the quiet confidence of your true self. The love you seek is not outside of you, it is already within. When you recognize this, the universe will mirror your truth, and everything you desire will flow naturally into your life. In the end, it is your authenticity, your unwavering self-respect, and your deep self-love that will lead you to the relationships, the success, and the fulfillment that you seek. The power lies within you, and when you stand in it, the world must respond in kind.